Florida State 2026, coming off 2 down years in a row. I have one big question for this team, but we are going to discuss where the program is at, where the roster's at, more importantly, and what to expect for this coming season. So, as far as the program goes, here's a quick glimpse at what Florida State has been doing, recruiting wise, transfer wise, talent acquisition overall. You can see their overall recruiting rankings nationally, as well as where they rank in the ACC. And then those graphs on the bottom, how much are they actually retaining? So it might come as a surprise to a lot of people that Florida State's basically the second best recruiter in the ACC. Now, is the ACC the best recruiting conference? Absolutely not. But a lot of people will just come out and tell you Florida State is a transfer portal team. And they are. They're second in transfer portal acquisitions, too. They're trailing Miami in both of those metrics. But overall, this is pretty clearly the second best talent acquirer over the last 3 years. And that has coincided with Clemson's fall from grace. As they don't use the portal, their recruiting has plummeted. Florida State's past them. Retention's been a little up and down for this team. They're at 74% of last year. 30% of 2024 is pretty bad, especially considering that was a decent class. And a lot of the players they lost were at the top of that class. But overall, the talent on Florida's roster is not bad. Now, certain positions we'll talk about, and maybe they're not maximizing this talent. That's a very real argument. And that's kind of how you get 2-10, 5-7 in back-to-back years. Last year, of course, they open up with that crazy win over Alabama. I notoriously took Alabama in that game. And Alabama, not only did they not cover, they lost outright by 14 points. But after that, their wins were against an FCS school, East Texas A&M, Kent State, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech. All of them quality wins, and honestly, they should have had two more. If you look at post-game win expectancy, Virginia, 65% post-game win expectancy for FSU. Stanford, 73%. Analytically, this was a 7-5 season, which looks a lot better than 5-7. Can't lose those coin flip games. That brings us to our first big question. What kind of coach is Mike Norvell? You've got the undefeated season. You follow that up with 2-10. Now you go 2-5. Is there anyone whose seat is hotter in the entire country? Like, let me know what you think about that. I personally think probably Mike Norvell is the hottest seat in the country. Now, we know he comes from an offensive background. That's going to be really important this year because they lost Gus Malzahn. Just retires, getting older. I get it. So they promote pass game coordinator Tim Harris Jr. Didn't exactly happen at a ideal time. So now you're going to get Norvell being a huge part of this offense. So last year, they were actually a bit more efficient offensively than you'd think. 21st overall. They were up-tempo, very run-heavy. You guys know that with Malzahn. That's kind of just what happens with him. Now, DC, Tony White is back for year 2. This is a unit you could see improve pretty drastically. Overall, just going from 1 year to the next, because Tony White's defenses at Nebraska were awesome. He was with Syracuse before that, and immediately Florida State jumped to 61st in total defense. There's definitely still some work to be done, especially at defensive coordinator, but I think the talent they're bringing in should be a little bit closer to what White wants to run in year 2. Still, it's a question, as is Norvell taking over the reins at the top. So let us dive into the roster and see what we're working with. We're immediately going to jump to big question number 2 here, which is quarterback. Brief explanation for what you see on the screen. We were using a Google Doc. This is a bit more clean, but you can't see as many players. Basically, what you're looking at, who's the projected starter, the projected depth chart, how many snaps did they play the last 2 years, what star recruit are they, and then the value scores are 0 to 100 score, just trying to evaluate how talented a player is expected to be this upcoming season. 50 is dead average. Obviously, you get up closer to 100. Looking at some pretty elite players there. Ashton Daniels coming in is probably the biggest concern with the entire roster. Now, Ashton Daniels previously was at Stanford. Stanford's been a disaster of a program. What are you going to do? Go to Auburn. You're immediately beat out to start the year. That quarterback room was so bad under Jackson Arnold that Daniels eventually does make some starts. And it's kind of up and down. 6'2", 233 is his size, his career numbers, 60% completion. That's okay. 6.6 yards per attempt is kind of a little dink and dunk, but then 30 big time throws, 41 turnover worthy plays, excuse me. My big concern is he's played multiple years now, and none of those numbers ever really improved. You're looking at the same baseline stats really throughout his entire tenure. Now, he's played with 2 coaches that have been fired, so could somebody potentially coax this out of Daniels? I mean, he might be playing with his 3rd coach that's going to get fired. One redeeming quality with him is he is very mobile, so he does fit this kind of offense Florida State wants to run. But I'm not sure you're really looking at a quarterback with a ceiling. So that's a big question. From there, I think your main challenger is 4-star Kevin Sperry, 42 snaps to his name. There's some other deeper candidates like Dean DeNoble from Lafayette. Maybe Malachi Marshall, a JUCO kid. But currently, Florida State's quarterback room ranks 72nd nationally, 12th in the ACC. By far, my biggest concern on the entire roster. Let me know if you agree. And then I think everything gets a bit better from there, especially the skill position players are actually pretty good with Florida State, which is where we will pivot to next. Deuce Robinson, one of the best receivers in college football. Former 5-star. His build is very unique, 6'6", 230. He had 18 contested catches because of that. And his efficiency was out of this world, over 1,000 yards, over 3 yards per route run, which is well above that 2.0 threshold. I think there's an argument he's maybe the most quarterback-friendly receiver in the entire country. So Deuce Robinson being there, elite place to start. Then you get Mekhi Danzy, 27 catches for him last year, 571 yards. In and out of the slot, he did crest 2.0 yards per route, but he was a bit raw, so I'm hoping we get some development. I mean, this is a guy that was playing running back coming out of high school. Now, he was a former track champion. I think that explosiveness was immediately apparent when we saw Danzy last year. There's a lot of upside with him, and then you get to some of your younger elite recruits. I think sophomore 4-star Javen Bogg should probably play a larger role. Wasn't on the field too much last year, but 9 catches. His recruitment it calls for more playing time. But there's going to be competition. They added 4 freshman receivers this year: Jason Lopez, Devin Carter, Brandon Bennett, and E.J. White. You have another 4-star from last year, Tayshawn Gelsey, and then Tarek Mallory. He's back on the team too. We currently rank Florida State 10th at receiver nationally, 3rd in the ACC. It is not only you have an elite player up at the top in Deuce Robinson. Danzy's a good secondary piece, and the depth here is incredible. If you have an injury, we're talking probably 3 or 4 4-stars that are going to see the field outside of catastrophe. Like, they're probably going to redshirt some of these guys, which I think makes a lot of sense. Tight end, you lose Randy Pittman, you lose Marqueston Douglas. Randy Pittman goes to SMU, but Landon Thomas is back, kind of a guy I've always been lighting a candle for. He's 6'4", 240, former 4-star. He has not been the best blocker, but as a receiver, he's been above average. His size is good, so I have hope that the blocking will come around at some point. And if it doesn't, you have a younger 4-star redshirt freshman, Chase Lofton. He only played 15 snaps last year, but you bring in a 4-star freshman in this class, Xavier Tiller. Desirio Riles comes in from East Carolina. Not the best blocker, better receiver. He's probably like a contingency plan or a player that maybe is used a bit in rotation, some 12 personnel stuff. Florida's tight end room is 33rd nationally, 9th in the ACC, but I think you can pretty clearly see some upside as long as there's development for some of the younger players with this team. Offensive line, there's no way around this. They are replacing a lot. And they were actually a lot better on the offensive line than you might think. They were 14th in pass blocking, 36th in run blocking. The problem is almost every starter is gone, including some pretty good ones like Luke Pettibon, Micah Pettis, Jacob Rizzi. So you're looking at a lot of transfers. And the first one, left tackles, Xavier Chaplin from Auburn. He's 6'8". He's basically started for 3 years now. He had 2 with Virginia Tech, had another with Auburn. Last year, joining the SEC, his numbers did regress a little bit. So I'm wondering if he comes back and he's in the same conference now, obviously. Do these numbers bounce back? And I think the answer is probably yes. Your left guard, I think you're looking at Andre Otto or Paul Bowling. Could be a battle here. Otto's a redshirt junior 3-star, hasn't really played a lot, 286 snaps, but he's probably more talented than Paul Bowling. Bowling is a sophomore coming up from Troy. Now, he played immediately as a freshman. Average numbers kind of across the board, especially in the run game. This is going to be another big jump for him. Low-level recruit, started immediately with Troy. Now he's coming Sun Belt to ACC. But I think you probably can hold on that position at least at an average level. They'll compete. Center, not really much of a competition here. I think Braden Joyner wins this. The Auburn-Purdue transfer, he started 2 years with average results in both. I think that's good enough for the ACC. Chavez Thompson's getting some hype. He played 68 snaps last year. He's a redshirt freshman. I think Joyner wins this, but it's kind of good to have that sort of contingency plan. And then Nate Paps comes in from Bowling Green, should be your right guard. He played tackle at Bowling Green. He's 6'7", but apparently he's going to play guard here. 3-year starter in the MAC. He leveled up each season. Really good last year with 14 pressures allowed and strong run blocking, which leaves us just right tackle. And again, there's a couple options here. I wouldn't be surprised if Pabst ends up playing it, but Jonathan Daniels is your 4-star redshirt sophomore, played 81 snaps, kind of been waiting in the wings. You have Chimdia Nwaiwu from Stephen F. Austin. He was 69th percentile. That's in the FCS. Those kind of numbers start to get dicey if those players will make the jump. Like, we need 80th percentile, 90th percentile players to be a little more confident. I think he's probably better in the 2 deep versus a starting option. But you heard a lot of names here. What does it all mean? Basically, this offensive line has not recruited super well. They're doing a lot of work via the portal. They still rank 50th nationally, 8th in the ACC. I think it's a mild concern. There's enough here with the depth to piece together a unit. Will it approach the top of the conference? That's a different story. I'm not 100% sure about that. Getting to running back, run out a couple guys. Gavin Sawchuk's on Northwestern. Jalen Lucas, he's on Tulane. Roydell Williams graduated. It makes sense to run those guys out after Castellanos led the team in rushing. But they get Quintrivion Wisner from Texas. And speaking of run out of the building, Texas ran out Wisner. I don't really know if that was the right answer. He had an awesome season in 2024, over 1,000 yards. Last year, he only put up 606. It looks bad until you look at his efficiency. Yards per carry, yards after contact, forced missed tackles was basically identical on a rate stat basis. What did change was that offensive line got significantly worse. So I'm a Wisner guy a little bit. 6 feet, 201, good pass catcher, 66 catches over the last 2 years. I actually think the tandem between him and Usman Kroma should be awesome. Speak of efficiency, as a 4-star freshman, Kroma was ridiculous when he was out there. 5.6 yards per carry, 29 forced missed tackles, 4.1 yards per carry after contact. Decent pass catcher. I mean, this should be an awesome 1-2 punch. Depth pieces, Sam Singleton. He's kind of played that role for years now. Jamari Sands comes in from FAU. I don't think we see much of him. But this Florida State running back room quietly, 13th nationally, 3rd in the ACC. And the story with this offense is basically this is a team that quietly has a lot of talent around the QB. Every single skill position's at least average to some of them significantly above average, like wide receiver. O-line, I don't know if it's an elite unit, but it very clearly meets the threshold you need to have a successful offense. What do we get out of Daniels? That's what the whole offense really comes down to, in my opinion. And before we get to the defense, this video is brought to you by our college football summer guide. We've been hard at work trying to get this to you ever since the spring. And what this includes for just $50, projections for every single game. That's a score, a total, and a spread. That means win totals for every single team, all 138. There will also be player projections for those of you involved in best ball. That's down to the statistical level. Think passing yards, passing touchdowns, etc. Depth charts for all 138 teams, which includes our value grading score. You've seen that on the screen in this very video. You'll get written analysis for most teams and players, which updates constantly throughout the summer. And that is a real separator for us versus the competition. Whenever news breaks, that will be immediately updated. You also get Discord access, which allows you to chop it up on any team, player, anytime there's a story. A lot of like-minded people in there just like you. You can also ask any question. Those will be addressed either here or in the Discord itself. And if you'd like to support in a smaller way, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. That helps show YouTube that this content is actually worthwhile, and it gets us in front of new viewers in the long run, which just helps us keep doing this. You can also hype the video, leave a comment. Those are great ways to support the channel. And thank you if you've done any of that. It truly does help the channel grow. Last thing, if you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, back to the video. Defense. All right, defense. It was a middle of the pack unit last year, first year under White. Should be expecting improvement. A lot of young players. They were 30th in run defense, 98th in pass rush. First thing with the defensive line, I have some players you could potentially switch their position between edge and defensive tackle. Florida State rotates a ton on the defensive line, and not just players in, players out. They move their positions around. So you'll see a guy like Daryl Desir or his twin Manjel Desir. Sometimes they're true 9 tech. Sometimes they're playing in at like 3 tech. You just have to know this is kind of what they do. So on the edge group, you do have the twins back. Daryl and Mandrell, both solid seasons as true freshmen. Daryl was obviously the much better recruit, but funny enough, Mandrell, he was the one that actually played more last year, which bridged the gap between what we're expecting for these two players moving forward, but still we have Daryl at the helm of this edge group. And it's not like he was bad either. They're actually almost looking at identical rate statistics as pass rushers. Daryl had 20, Mandrell had 24. You just didn't have quite as many sacks for Daryl. So as soon as he starts putting those home, you're looking at a solid player. Rylan Kennedy comes in from Texas A&M. He's played a rotational role there for quite a long time. And then you get Jalen Anderson. He was the #1 JUCO edge defender in this entire cycle. So I think that's a pretty good place to start. 4-star freshman Jamin Pinkney comes in to sort of round this out. But you're not really replacing a lot. The guys you lost, like Jason Jenkins went to Mississippi State, James Williams went to OK State. If anything, you might have upgraded this position. Inside, you do lose a 4th-round pick in Darrell Jackson, but this is a unit that has a couple good players returning, like Daniel Lyons, Deontay McCray. Those are the two main ones. Lyons actually did his best work kind of in the run game. He did have 15 pressures, but he's nearly 300 pounds. I think that makes sense to kind of lead your unit. McCray was really good in run defense too. He had 10 pressures. You bring in Jordan Sanders from Texas State. He's another 300-pounder. Did have some pass rush juice. He was originally a Cal Poly guy, so he's kind of trying to climb the ladder here. And then redshirt freshman Kevin Wynn, Tylan Lee are both back. You have a couple incoming freshmen, Ernest Rankins, Franklin Whitley. This is a very deep defensive tackle unit. There is maybe some questions with the talent up at the top, but personally, I think with the amount they're going to rotate, you could see Florida State's defensive line be a little better even than where we rank them, depending on where they play, all these guys. And we currently have them 36th nationally, 7th in the ACC. And again, I'm a White believer. I think year 2 will be better. Linebacker. So I'm not sure how they're going to configure this unit, and that's because they have a lot of options. That's a good thing. You lose Justin Cryer, you lose Elijah Herring. You have 2 incumbents back, like Blake Nicholson's in year 3, 4th on the team in tackles last year. Definitely a better run defender compared to coverage, but this is a solid starter. Omar Graham is also back. He started 5 games himself last year. Another really good player in run defense, 38 tackles. Also decent in coverage. He only allowed 66 scoreless yards. But you have a couple transfers that should play for this unit, if not start in a rotational role. Mekhi Gabayer is well-traveled at this point. Nebraska, then North Carolina. Has only played 69 snaps, but he's always been very clearly above average when he's been on the field. And then you bring in Chris Jones from Southern Miss. The guy had 135 tackles last year. You have a 4-star Isaiah Williams coming in for depth. I don't know how exactly they're going to configure this. I imagine all 4 guys will play to some degree. And that's how you get the linebacker room ranking 33rd nationally, 5th in the ACC. Which brings us to our final unit, the secondary. This was the worst unit on the defense last year, 104th in coverage. You lose a lot of players. Jerry Wilson he was a UDFA. You lose Earl Little to Ohio State. Edwin Joseph is on Ole Miss, but you have some safeties back. And one of them, Ashlyn Barker, had an awesome season. Second on the team in tackles, only 10 catches allowed. This is a guy that should play without a doubt. He's big, 6'3", 218, which is awesome in run defense. You can play him in the box. Great place to start. You also have back KJ Kirkland, who regressed last year, especially in coverage. Decent run defender and started 4 games, but we don't even have him listed. I think he could very well start over CJ Richards, who is the last player we have listed on this list. He's a transfer that came in and 89th percentile FCS production at Illinois State. It's a bit hard to ignore. I think he could very easily win this job. I think that'll be a battle, but don't count out 4-star freshman Trey Bell either. He could also win this job. So I think you're looking firmly at Barker, one combination of maybe Kirkland, Richards, or Bell winning that last job. At corner, you do get back Jabril Rawls, only played in 7 games due to injury. He's a standout player. Not too much to be said there. I think maybe things get a little sticky after that, but there are a lot of options. Like Quindarius Jones was another player who was hurt quite a bit at corner. He'll compete with some of the names on the screen, like a Nehemiah Chandler from South Alabama, formerly of Georgia Tech. He was kind of a boom-bust player, but had 8 PBUs and 2 interceptions. Nickel, I think, is probably Mekhi Jones, who had to play immediately as a freshman in an atrocious Duke secondary. But he also developed throughout the year and ended up being a pretty decent starter for them down the stretch. But there's a ton of 4-stars at corner, like Charles Lester is still here. Jamari Howard, Ricky Knight, Zay Thomas. They added a top 60 4-star in Chuck Kennan, which is, borderline 5-star recruit. Carson Hobbs also came in from Notre Dame for depth. Right now, the secondary is 49th overall, 8th in the ACC, largely on the back of there are some players that need a bit of experience, but you could very well see that happening and going in the right direction for Florida State. Kicker should be Gabe Panikowski, was at Oklahoma State last year, didn't play, but pretty good when he was at Idaho State before that, so kicking I think will be fine. Here's the overall outlook for Florida State. This graph should not surprise anyone. Biggest concern on the entire team is QB. We have Florida State ranked 34th overall nationally. Their win total is at 6.5, juiced pretty heavy to the under. As you can see, my projections are a bit aggressive on that. I think they go bowling, and I think they might win 7 or 8 games. Our projection is 6.73. Strongest position groups, definitely the skills on offense, and then the front 7 on defense, where I think this team really excels. But here's the schedule. They open up against New Mexico State in week 0. Very tough game right away in week 1. Luckily, they're going to have a couple extra days, but you're playing SMU. That's one of the best teams in the conference. Then you get your bye before Alabama. You have to, the revenge factor for Alabama, I think, is going to be real. That's definitely not an easy game. Then you get Central Arkansas. Once you're in the heart of ACC play, the real problem for Florida State is the schedule. So not only do you have SMU in week 1, your schedule in conference features Virginia, Louisville, Miami, Clemson, even Pitt, NC State. Like, we're just spraying the top of the projected standings in the ACC. Florida State has them all. They play Boston College kind of to mix in there, but there's a very real chance they're facing at least 6 bowl teams within their conference. And then you get Alabama. You also get Florida, a game we didn't mention, as a rivalry. And then littered throughout here as well, you have a ton of short weeks. Like, you're playing at Louisville on Friday on a short week. You're missing a day there. You're playing at Pitt on a short week. So this is a pretty tough schedule for Florida State. I don't know who they pissed off to get this, but I'm optimistic on the team. I like the team. I'm just not sure the schedule really sets up for Mike Norvell to keep his job. But let me know what you think there. Could be tough for Norvell with this schedule.